Hello and welcome, writers, to the Writer's Room, where I help you tell your story and answer your story questions. My name is TylerMowery, and if you would like to develop your story with me, click the top link in the description, join the Discord, and ask me a question. I'm seeing people hop into the Discord. What's up, Reyes? The 12-ounce tube of sausage. I remember speaking to you a little while ago. I forget what your name is, though. Your government name. Willie, Shira, good to see you all here. Tom, what's going on, man? Yo, yo, yo. Alex, how you doing? Psycho Brigade's here. Nelson. Nicoletta, how's it going? Hey, pretty island girl, good to see you here. Alex is asking me about I suggest an exercise for people who are unsure if they're interested in screenwriting. Alex, I can't help you if you're straight up not interested. I think you've got to figure out what you want to do. And the best way to decide if you're interested in writing is to do a little bit of writing. That's what I would say. Good to see Steven, Migsy. Migsy, we can definitely get to your... Nico, okay, good to know. Migsy, we can definitely get to your script today or your story framework today if you have one to share. Nico says, been watching your content for years, totally changed my storytelling. Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate that. Glad to hear it. I hope to only continue doing that more and more. I've got a lot of fun stuff coming. These live streams, I'm going to be polishing them and making them better and better and better as we go forward. And I've got a lot of fun plans about what I want to do next on the channel. Yeah, so... Good morning, Stevenson. Hope you're doing well. All right. Okay, so Migsy, I see that you've got your document in here. I am going to need access, so if you can go like this. Here, I'll show it to you. If you go like this, let me share my screen so you can see. So, Migsy, click the button up here that says share. And then anyone with the link right here, put that as editor, and then I can take a look at your story circle. How's everybody doing this Friday morning? I hope your Friday morning is going well. Had some pretty intense storms last night. It's like really intense lightning all last night, so I'm glad that I did not lose electricity out here in the boonies. All right, let me check on this document, see if I have access. Yes, I do. All right. All right, Migsy, if you want to come up and speak, we can take a look at this document. How are you doing, man? I don't think so. No, I think we're good. Discord does a pretty good job of cutting your audio when you're speaking. You should be able to, okay. There's also an audience tab. Like if you see the audience below you and there's a small little arrow pointing down. If you click that, I think that also helps, but. No worries. Okay. Oh, wait. Yeah, gotcha. Give me just 1 minute. I'm being told on YouTube that they can't hear you through the YouTube stream, so I think it's an issue on my end. Give me just a second here. Apologies. Okay, one moment. No, I think it's on my end. I don't understand why Discord decides to not work here. Give me just a second. I changed nothing, and then everything is different. Let's see. Am I getting...
What?
Oh, here we go. I think I might know the issue. Let's do that. Nope. Still not working. Well, I'm not getting volume out of my desktop audio at all right now. So it's got to be on my end. Yeah. Yeah. 1 second here. Why is this totally off? Properties. Can I just do that? Okay, it's... Oh, wait. Talk again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I think we've got
Oh,
levels.
yeah, I see the little radius of around my face now.
All right. Can you guys hear that on stream? You should be able to now. Okay, I think we're good. Josh,
Okay.
let me know if they can hear that on stream. I can hear. Okay, great. Thank you, Carly. Let's hop back in. Okay, some quick technical difficulties. Let's hop back in. Okay,
All right.
so you were
All right. So
essentially...
yeah, so it's a little 25-minute film. The genre, I have it kind of a mix. It's sort of an intergenerational family, um, psychological, supernatural, because it's sort of the ghost, but there's even a little ambiguity whether it's really a ghost or it's her mind projecting him, dealing with grief. And it has a makeover story in there too. So it's sort of a mixture of genres.
Okay.
Philosophical conflict is sort of, tradition. On one side, you've got like tradition, loyalty to the past, loyalty to the memory of a loved one, or steeping in grief, versus change, moving on, creating a new life after loss. It's sort of the two sides of the philosophical argument. Um, I I I somewhere I did kind of look at the four corners, but I don't have it here in this treatment, and that's probably something I could look at in a little more detail, maybe to enhance things. But
Sure.
uh, um,
Yeah.
one of the
So
things
you
I
said
wanted,
you did look at like a four corners somewhere else.
uh, yeah, somewhere in my, and I've kind of have notes in a few different places, so I'm a little disorganized with this one. So I did have sort of four arguments at one point, but I can't find them. So,
Okay.
um, but that's something we could look at. Um, below this too, it's like grief versus moving on, or loyalty versus betrayal. They're loyalty to the past versus change. They're all kind of flavors of the same conflict in my opinion. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing I wanted to ask you about, because you talk about the lie versus the truth, and that's something I'd love to understand better. Um, I guess I'm not getting that
Sure.
concept as two sides of the, because it's two sides of the philosophical conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's one thing you could clarify if you wanted to.
Well, I think
Um,
if you're
mhm,
making how you're building in lie and truth is if you are ultimately moving your character, let's say from grief to moving on, right? Something like this
mhm,
versus like because you kind of have the betrayal element. I think this is where we would be looking at that four corner kind of opposition
mhm,
where part of the the positive of the move on side is obviously moving on, and then the negative
mhm.
that could be seen as betrayal, and so now we're starting to build that out. But I
Yeah.
think when we're looking at it from the lie versus truth, it's more what is the character holding on to. If we're setting up that this character is grieving, but then they're getting to a point where it's not just loyalty to this person, but they are holding themselves in this grief
Mhm,
position in a
mhm,
negative way, whatever that reason is now becoming their lie that they're holding on to. So
mhm,
you can look at it as the character specifically is going to have, they are in, when we're looking at the philosophical conflict from a big, all encompassing level, it's like grief first, moving on, these kinds of things. But then when we come down into the character a bit more and we say, okay, this character is not just grieving and then they're moving on in a healthy way. They are holding on to something here, and what they're holding on to becomes their lie and becomes the thing that they need to figure out how to let go of so that they can move on to what's coming next. Because in your story, you are arguing for they need to move on, they need to go into this new life, and so you need to send it that way. There's a
yeah.
version where you could flip it and say the them not moving on could be, it's, this is where it gets hard because it, I think naturally you would argue that holding on to grief for an extended period of time is fundamentally unhealthy, so it's
Exactly.
on that negative side. um, but there could be a world where you're saying no, they have to stay in this old place. I don't know, but yeah, ultimately it's what is the character's specific lie that they're holding on to? What's the specific reason as to why they are not moving on, and that ultimately becomes their lie?
Hmm. I think I have a line as we get further down that might speak to that.
Okay.
But so I have three characters. So this is like even something, if it's a four corner argument, I'm not sure if I have a fourth character, but
Hmm.
representing that. But I have Eleanor, who is she's 60-year-old widow. Her husband died like 2 years ago. They were married probably in their 20s. So, she's been 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and for whatever reason, and this is a good point. I haven't really plumbed why she's stuck in grief. And I think that's probably a good reason. That's a good thing for me to look at a little
Hmm.
deeper here. Um, but you know, is stuck in her grief. Eleanor feels she should continue to mourn her ex-husband's death and remain stuck in grief. Eleanor believes grieving her late husband is a measure of loyalty to him and his memory. Eleanor at the start of the story believes moving on would be a betrayal, perhaps so much so that she doesn't even see the possibility of moving on, which, some people are so consumed in grief, they just can't see, this is the some bonds last forever, Lily dear. That was sort of, she's maybe resigned herself that Nigel was her love. She's 60 years old, so she's still young. Like she's too young to give up. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah. So and like my own parents were really tight. Like they've both passed, but they were really tight. And of course, they were older when they died. When my dad died. So, but I could see with a couple that's really tight how hard it would be to move on. But anyway,
Definitely.
uh, uh, but then I have see internal need, meaning but internally Eleanor needs to let go of grief, let go of the feeling that moving on is somehow disloyal to Nigel, somehow betraying Nigel. What she needs to realize is that not moving on is a betrayal of herself. She's 60 years old and too young to give up the rest of her life to grief.
Totally.
Um, External want. I have it at the beginning of the story. Eleanor's external want is, and I don't know if this is really true, but well, it sort of is. She's choosing to remain stuck in grief. But over the course of the story, her external wants grow. She eventually embraces Lily, her granddaughter, is the catalyst. Lily wants to get her out of her black clothes, basically. Let's liven things up.
Totally.
And she's the catalyst that, through a style makeover, um, starts a change. So that's and then.
So on this,
Mm-hmm.
and you may have some of this farther on in your story circle. I think the key things that's standing out for me is Eleanor at the start of the story believes moving on would be a betrayal, perhaps so much so that she doesn't even see the possibility at all of moving on. I think we want something about Nigel and Eleanor's relationship, maybe an actual scene that we get of them in flashback that shows how she is attaching this to the idea of betrayal. Like, did Nigel create this belief in her? Did she naturally come to this conclusion because of something that he said in love, and now she's taking that as, I have to stay in this place? Could it be something else? And then we also have at the external one here at the beginning of the story, Eleanor's external one is to remain stuck in grief over Nigel. I think attaching this, because this is still vague or more abstract, I wonder if there's a way that we can attach this external desire to something more clearly in the physical world that also gives us a stronger sense as to why she thinks moving on would be a betrayal.
Okay. I mean, I have her constantly wearing black still after 2 years as sort of the externalization of that. But you're right. It's not saying why. It's not. It's just saying that that is the case. She's kind of committed to still staying stuck in grief. She says she thinks black is slimming, which a lot of women say, or a lot of people say. But yeah, you're right. I probably need to plumb the depths of that a little bit more. But Nigel is a character in his sort of haunting. He is a character in the story. So
Okay.
the way the story is structured is, she sees Nigel, whether he's a ghost or her projection. I kind of like the fact that it's a little ambiguous. And then Lily's there. Lily doesn't really see Nigel, although like I have little hints like it feels chilly in here and things like that. But and Eleanor responds to both of them are sort of in conflict in a sense, because Nigel doesn't want Eleanor to move on and Lily does.
Okay.
So their interactions with Eleanor are kind of both there. they're not. Nigel sees Lily, but Lily doesn't see Nigel. But Eleanor responds to them, and sometimes the response is means something different to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like she says one line, but it's kind of in response to both people.
I like that.
Like that. Yeah. So that's why I kind of like that ambiguity and flickering happening with things. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so anyway,
I'm looking at Nigel here, and you're saying upholding traditions is essential even in death, and we're having him be a character that is present in the story as this ghost or as this projection. So, from my perspective, I think this is what his argument is to Eleanor, and we are really showing that. You may already have this in the story, but we're really showing this is like you are upholding tradition essentially by remaining loyal even after death. You are upholding tradition, you know, and that idea is kind of interesting. The idea of specifically upholding tradition, you know, you are upholding your own dignity. And you were mentioning that you have three characters in this story, and whether or not you needed to add a fourth to create that four corner opposition. One suggestion could be that you create a character that is the negative example of what happens when one doesn't uphold traditions, let's say, right? Or what Nigel sees as the worst case scenario for Eleanor. Maybe there's another woman in the neighborhood, or maybe it's another man in the neighborhood whose wife died, and now he's, you know, he sort of loses his dignity in some way, and now we have this sense of Eleanor with Nigel is kind of pointing fingers saying, you don't want to end up like that, and if you don't remain in this grief, you will then lose your dignity.
Yeah. Well, okay, so there are two other characters. They're like side characters. One is a hairdresser.
Okay.
And as part of the end of the makeover. And then there's actually, after she gets out of the hair salon, you know, she looks different. She actually kind of looks hot, you know, and so they're leaving the shopping mall, and this like silver fox guy having coffee, you know, kind of is looking at her. And so and Lily notices it and tells Eleanor, and Eleanor gets all self-conscious. But like, so there's that. That's sort of the. Maybe I could, you know, I guess I've played with that a little bit, so I think that might be a start of it. But it's like a threat, you know, the having someone else interested in Eleanor rather than having her clinging to grief forever with him is
totally
sort of the threat.
Yeah, and I think you can have that kind of character, but I think that kind of character is falling in the same corner of the opposition as Lily would be falling into, right? Like embrace life, embrace change. So this guy, this silver fox guy is that, right? He is the symbol of, hey, I am embracing a new life, or you would be kind of embracing change. And then the character that I'm suggesting is somebody that not like this sort of potential worst case scenario of what happens when you get back out there, right? Like what happens if you move on, but then you lose your dignity, right? If there's a guy who, you know, now he's like the guy that nobody wants to be with, or something like that, or we're showing now Nigel can point his finger and say, you don't want to end up like that, therefore you have to live in grief forever.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's a fun idea.
Let me throw in a note here.
Thank you.
That is the symbol of what could, it's like what could go wrong, right? So you're going to embrace change. All that sounds great and lovely when we're talking to Lily, but what could go wrong? What could, you know, how could one lose their dignity, or end up in potentially an even lonelier place? Like, I don't exactly know yet what that looks like, but I think that really can round out that negative side of the opposition here. So we're seeing that character that Nigel is able to make into this worst case scenario. And what you could also have through that, building in this new character to round out that four corner opposition, is that if Eleanor's view of that character changes, right? They get new information about how that character's life really is, let's say, that also could be involved in her changing her point of view, because that could be part of the lie, right? Part of the lie is that this person over here is undignified and living this horrible life and are unhappy and this kind of thing. But then Eleanor ends up interacting with that person and realizes, no, that's this Nigel projection or this Nigel manipulation of my situation.
Yeah, good point. I wanted to note, Joseph has looked at this already and had given me he's making some points here, and like 12-ounce tube of sausages also. So, but Joseph says he thinks it should be a woman, this bad case character. Everything Nigel tells Elle not to become.
Right.
Woman to more closely mirror Eleanor and not confuse a viewer needing to be translated to a male. Yeah, but I think that's very good points. That's a really good point. Interesting. I keep fearing that it's going to extend the length because by the way, I also have had this started with it's as I was writing it, I actually started to see situations where this could become like a TV series. Like I could see other situations of Nigel continuing to haunt her while she's getting on with her life. Like maybe he's kind of like a sad puppy who keeps coming back.
That's interesting.
But anyway.
Well, listen, I don't think you need to worry about length in regards to, I mean, already you're saying 23 to 25 minutes. If we're saying that a page is usually on average 1 minute. We're already looking at something that's going to be around 25 pages.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to have any issue at all having a minimum of 4 core characters and then maybe 2 or 3 that are more side characters. I don't think you're going to have an issue with that. I think you could have a version of this story that we're talking about in a 10-page. So I wouldn't be super concerned about the length at this particular point.
It started first as like a 15-page, and then as I developed it, it got a little richer, and that extended the length a little bit. But of course, maybe there's a way to even synthesize it down a bit more. But anyway.
Yeah, and that ultimately depends on questions that you can answer a bit later, which is what would you want to be doing with this ultimately? Because you mentioned maybe you see this as a TV series or something like that. But if you're seeing this as a one-off short, I would even recommend getting nearer to that 15-page point, just because. Because if you did want to go and make the thing, and then let's say you wanted to actually enter it into festivals and those sort of stuff, this is not verified or certified by someone, but the word on the street that I have gotten by people who have done shorts is being in the 10 to 15 minute range is very strong, because it makes it a lot easier for you to have festival slots in a way that if you have like a 32-minute short, it makes it much more difficult.
Harder. Yes. No, I've heard that too. So, but that'll be a challenge, but I may have to kill my darlings and just get it, more crisp and a little tighter. But yeah, this is great. Yeah. Okay. You want to go through the story circle?
Yeah. Let's take a look at the story circle while we're here.
Okay. So I have the description of the story circle. I also, and we don't have to read through them all, but I kind of put images or dialogue that kind of speaks to the argument. I really enjoy your videos talking about how dialogue is basically the philosophical argument and a discussion about choice, and it's great. So I really taken that to heart as I've actually been writing the dialogue in this. But
Excellent.
excellent. Anyway, but yeah, Eleanor is stuck in grief, even though it's the second anniversary of her late husband's death. Her teenage fashionista daughter or granddaughter is visiting. Her late husband Nigel is still haunting her. Like I said, ultimately, whether he's literally a ghost or a manifestation of her mind's grief is meant to be ambiguous. I want the motif to flicker, unless I should choose it, definitively choose it to make it stronger. But I do like it flickering that way myself. But
I think that works. I don't think it has to be. I mean, clearly it's attached to her, so there's going to be that. Even if he is like literally this ghost, I think you can play it in the middle here. I don't see immediately a reason that is going to harm the story.
Cool. Eleanor sees Nigel sitting in the chair he died in. Lily does not see him, though. Lily senses a chill in the air. And then I have like images. We can skim through that.
Let's keep on the story circles first, because I just want to get an initial skeletal understanding of the structure you're trying to go for, and then we can go back through.
Sure. I have it as want. Eleanor wants to remain steeped in grief out of loyalty to her late husband Nigel. She feels moving on as a betrayal. Lily wants her granny to move on because it's been long enough. And actually, Joseph had some really good points. I mean, he gave me even some reasons that are maybe more appropriate to a 16-year-old, but I don't have them at the top of my head now. He made some very good comments for me, but that's essentially it. And Granny must move on. Granny's too young to be this old. It's like her granny. Kids like that, they want everybody to feel good, right? Mm-hmm. And she sees her granny not feeling good.
And with this, with the two here, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier as well, I think we can get more specific in regards to, like you were talking, like Lily is this fashionista. I think you have some sort of like fashion event or something that can come up very early on that now we have this debate about that. It's not simply just Eleanor needs to ditch the black mourning clothes and needs to liven things up. It's that maybe there's some sort of event that Lily either or both needs Eleanor to go to for whatever reason and also wants her to. Like maybe it's specifically for like women in their 60s or something like this. And Lily's saying, this would be a perfect opportunity for you to get out of the house, for you to get out of these black clothes, and for me to practice what I want to do. And so now, rather than them talking more in the abstract about, you should, you need to get out of these clothes, this sort of thing, we tie it to something specifically in the physical world that Lily wants Eleanor to do. And so now we have a better sense as to why they are having this debate right now, right? Because rather than it just Lily comes by the house and she happens to decide today's the day for this to happen, it's like, no, she comes with a flyer for this event saying we should do this event. And now we have this choice that's very clear that we can then harness all of their discussion back and forth, and we can get a very quick understanding of the context based on this immediate choice that's connected to this specific event that would be coming.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fair. It just to ask you, like in this, if you look down, it's like Lily says it's been 2 years now. Isn't mourning done after one? And Eleanor says some vows last forever, Lily dear. And Nigel, of course, agrees with Eleanor. Like, you don't think that is enough?
I think you would have this dialogue come out motivated by this event or something that Lily is pushing Eleanor towards, right? So here's part of, like, a lot of the times when we get into this kind of dialogue, right? It's been 2 years now, isn't mourning done after one? We need to motivate the reason that they have decided to have this discussion today. And so
it's literally the second anniversary.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I actually set it up that way.
Okay. Okay. Well, that
and I have a like where Eleanor looks across and there's an armchair and Nigel's sitting in it, and Eleanor says, he died there. That's where he died.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're talking about the day he died. And of course, Lily looks at the chair and he's not there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's coming from that side of it. I mean, I see your point about maybe there's a another motivation, but I was looking at the motivation of it. It's in the grief. The motivation is within the grief rather than outside of the grief. What you're sort of kind of saying is saying it, Lily wants to bring her kind of outside of the grief. I mean, I'm going to consider it. I think this is a very interesting idea, but that's kind of how I had it set up.
I see that.
Uh, but that, uh, but anyway, but these are great ideas. I really appreciate um,
Yeah, that definitely does motivate it more to say this is the 2 year anniversary, and I remember you saying that.
mhm.
So you can
But
definitely have that be the motivation to have this conversation. Part of what
yeah,
I am just pushing for, and I know you said you're going to consider it, is the idea that we want to, especially in a short, right, where we're telling one story altogether, it's like we want to
yeah,
have some level of, at least in my opinion, like a lot of shorts can be too like at the house or
hmm
not sort of externally clear enough. And I'm a big fan of, at the very least, thinking about how do we make this story more visual. And a lot of those are going to be characters that want to do something in that external world. We can keep it around the house and that sort of thing, but
yeah.
it's definitely an idea
Well,
to
well,
consider.
and Joseph is reminding me. So it builds in that like Lily says, "Hey, I have an idea," and she goes and gets a scarf and she
Okay.
ties it around Eleanor's neck, put a little color, and then there's a discussion about that, and then she goes, "I got another idea," and then the next you cut to there's literally a fashion show happening in the house. So Lily's raiding the closet,
Okay.
doing what do they call a closet? There's a term for it. Closet shopping. So they're going closet shopping. So Lily's raiding the closet and doing like you can tell like she knows what she's doing, right? And so there's a whole scene about that where she puts this outfit on for Eleanor to try on, and then of course the outfit is actually like what Lily would wear, not what Eleanor. So there's like potential for some comedy there. It was my thought.
For sure.
Um, and so that I mean, again, the fashion show is it's drawn out of the grief. Lily's motivation. Hey, I have an idea. Let's try this. And she's just like spending the weekend with her grandma.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like fun. And then that evening, she and Nigel have a conversation. Well, you could see it as you go through it, but and do you want me to read that, or are
Yeah.
you kind of scanning through it? So Lily insists Eleanor needs to ditch the back clothing. She ties a scarf on Eleanor. Nigel thinks it clashes with the black. Lily thinks it looks great. Eleanor hints a smile. Situation escalates into a closet shopping exercise uh, and an outfit for Eleanor to try on backfires. That night, Eleanor and Nigel discuss the situation. Nigel doesn't want Eleanor to change. Um, because it means forgetting him, and you
Mm-hmm.
see like photographs of their life together,
Mm-hmm.
and like how kind of she's stuck in that age of style and that uh, memory. Eleanor defends Lily, saying she's just trying to help. She tells Nigel that maybe it's time to move on. Like maybe like you could see Eleanor's maybe considering that it is maybe time.
Mm-hmm.
They argue. Lily overhears the arguing in the she's like in the guest room, and then it escalates, and Lily comes to check to see if she's okay. And but not Nigel. Kind of the way I have it right now, I have Nigel gets really upset and he kind of disappears in a flash, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of creates an emotional scene for Eleanor. And and then Eleanor's like says, hey, talks about maybe we should go shopping tomorrow or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how that scene.
Okay.
So so they go shopping. Eleanor, you know, Lily's of course picking out things that are like short and like inappropriate
Mm-hmm.
for someone her age. But she eventually finds something. She gets some good duds, and she's starting to feel getting the uplifting feeling of maybe not being stuck in a rut anymore. That night, while admiring her purchases, Nigel's presence in the background, Eleanor realizes she needs something else, that she needs to change her hair. So they go to the salon. So she needs Sergio, which is the salon they passed while they were shopping.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to Sergio's, gets a new do. She's like completed her makeover. They're leaving the salon and they're walking out the mall, and this like hot silver fox guy is checking her out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thought is that maybe Nigel shows up, and he's like, I don't know. Um, there's almost like an argument between Nigel the ghost or her projection and there in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, that's kind of what's happening there.
Okay.
Um, it pisses off Nigel, who's been watching. He comes around, he kind of starts to mess with her. This is where I think I'm a little like, this is where I think like, should he actually kind of almost manifest like a ghost, or where the physicality, like he's doing things like throwing things off tables, or I don't know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it, but then the ambiguity is lost there. So
Well, I guess with the six here, my question would be, what would be because if it's just he's been watching, he comes around to mess with her. The embarrassment, I think, can be definitely part of this. I'm wondering, what is the cost of her beginning to embrace this new view? Because at this point, right, like she through the 4 and the 5, she is now embracing
yes,
the new idea of
yes,
we're doing this makeover. So I feel like there's a couple different ways this can go. Either one, you start it where she's not embracing this, where she's telling Lily, no, I don't want to do this, blah 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 blah, and then we have a big pay here that is another huge cost of her siding with Nigel. Or in this way, we have it where she has kind of made the decision. She starts off with Lily kind of insisting we need to get out of the clothes, and then ultimately at the 4, she's choosing Lily's view. Okay, great, we're going to do this. We're gonna change the look. I think that can work. And then they go to Sergio's. I think that can work as well. If that's the case, then here this would be like Nigel needs to not only come around and mess and cause some embarrassment, but I think there has to be some sort of real pushback here against like this is going to be the biggest moment of argument as to why Nigel's perspective could be correct.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, and so yeah, you're underlining something here too, because through the way it's written now, Nigel's kind of a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about, a villain or whatever, if he's the villain, say, you know, the villain doesn't think they're a jerk, right?
Right.
There's a real argument there.
Totally.
So yes, I think that's really good coaching, and this is where the argument, yeah, this is where he makes the argument for that somehow physically through his dialogue with her or whatever. Yeah, this is great. Good coaching. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think this is probably this was actually the newest scene that I kind of came up with, and it's the least developed. So
Sure.
this is perfect for me to learn from.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I mean, also within this, so already today we've taken a look at some potential changes here that's going to be taken in the story circle. And we also looked at, where is it? Yeah, adding a potential new character, these sorts of things. So there's definitely like this will as potential new
Mm-hmm.
characters involved that can also change elements of the story circle and vice versa. I know I also
Mm-hmm.
threw down this idea. Maybe as I'm reading forward, looking at kind of the scale that you have, this may not be necessary, but I'm going to leave the note there just for you to be able to
Okay.
consider it.
The note about what? What was that note that you
That
were
this was
referring?
the whole idea of like, could there be some sort of event that we're going to, which may just
Yes.
be that might just be the heightened sort of Hollywoodified version of this, um,
Yes.
and that rather because you essentially have this like your version of this is that they go out and they go to Sergio's, right? Versus
Yeah.
the $100,000 budget short film, which would be they actually do some sort of like fashion event or something like this. So
Right.
that may not be
Yeah. The fashion
necessary.
event is in the closet.
Right.
Is
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And I think that works.
Like she's playing a mixtape, like she calls it a wardrobe remix, and Eleanor goes, "Oh, like a music mix," and she's like, "Yes, Granny, you got it," and they're playing like, you know, club remix music or something while she's modeling the clothes or whatever.
That's awesome.
It's yeah. Anyway, um,
I get the name now more, Glammy.
Glammy.
I
Yeah,
like it.
she comes up with the name Glammy. Um, and yeah, so I mean, it's like is like I noticed like a lot of the projects people are working on here are like superhero projects. So this is totally not like that. But I don't know. I just thought it was like a charming little potential thing. But like
Yeah,
this is the challenge with these kinds of stories. They're kind of smaller, maybe quieter stories. Although I think there's a lot of I think I see potential for some comedy or dramedy here
totally.
because I'd see it. To actually see it being very emotional too. But but like I want it to be fresh. I want it to be uh, uh, like unpredictable. That's the thing is like, is this predictable? Like, because I know that, yeah, Eleanor's the change, and you would expect Eleanor would change from being stuck in grief to at the end not being stuck in grief, but I want it to be earned.
Hmm.
That's the I think that's the thing with something like that is like that might be the expectation of this story, but
Hmm.
you want it to be an earned expectation, not just some cliche kind of thing. And that's where I hope I'm not. I hope I don't have any uh, cliche things in here or stuff. But
Well, this is
I was trying to.
I
Mhm.
think the biggest piece here, and this is coming into your structure as well as getting a clearer and clearer sense of the philosophical argument from Nigel's perspective in regards to this
Yeah,
six. Because
yeah,
when we're looking at your story circle structure, the six and the seven, this is really going to be where our climax happens, right? Where we
yes,
have our big, huge problem here, and then we are going to have our climactic choice here that's saying, what will Eleanor do definitively? So,
hmm
in this, I think this is where we have some good setup here, right? We have Lily. She comes in. She's getting her to ditch the clothes. We go through that. We go to Sergio's. We have this moment with the Silver Fox. I think all of that is on the right track. This is the moment that I think
yeah,
is the biggest point right now that needs work
yeah,
because
yeah,
we need to get like what makes something feel less predictable is not that we don't necessarily know where we're going to end up. Like if you watch the Lord of the Rings films, for example,
hmm
you can have a pretty good prediction from scene one of this story saying, okay, good is probably going to win at the end here, right?
hmm
However, it
right,
is the argument and the pushback and the
yeah,
intensity and the amount that is built out that creates the interesting dilemma where we are
yeah,
interested in watching the journey of the story. Even if we have a journey, like if you go and you watch a a story about some hero, like if you go and watch a one of the better Marvel films or something like this, you have a general sense of okay, our hero is probably going to win. Or even in something like Game of Thrones, right? We've got an 8-season TV
hmm
show and you have a general sense that okay, Jon Snow
Hmm.
kind of seems to be at the center of this whole big epic. It's very likely that he's going to come out on top at the end, but it is the getting there that is really
Yeah.
interesting. And so that's what we're looking for here in this 6 is really building out Nigel's point of view. And I think, again, that is why this fourth character to round out your web is going to be important, because this
Yes.
character is also helping to beef up Nigel's point of view.
Yes. Yeah, good point. These are really good points. Yeah, like my mind is kind of racing now with this fourth character and who it might be um and yeah, just to make that the real plausibility of the argument, like that yeah, that's going to make it more suspenseful in a sense, and like like I'm noticing even the arc of the story, Eleanor from the beginning is making a steady climb, right? She
Mm-hmm.
gets the makeover. Like it's just a climb. There needs to be kind of a sudden fall,
Right.
and then even if it's a happy ending at the end, it needs to fall and then go back up again. I think so.
Totally.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. All right.
And
This is great.
when we have that 6 kind of final note, we're also planting the seeds of that in this 3. So the more that you have a sense of how you
Okay.
want this big 6 to play out, and again, I think this other character, this other fourth character, is going to be involved in the 3 as well as the 6,
Yeah.
because you have
Okay.
this sense of, okay, we've got this problem here. Like
Yeah.
in the same way that, so when the 1 through 4 of your circle is kind of setting up the elements of the story, and then we're paying those off in this climactic movement, we're doing that with the characters, we're doing that with the beats, we're doing that with these different things. So then in this 3, we're going to feel that other character is going to be involved in here on some level. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to look yet, but they're going to
Hmm.
be involved. We're going to get Eleanor and Nigel's initial perspective on that character, what they're doing initially, and then maybe that character and Nigel sort of rear up in the 6 and create this huge decision point for Eleanor in the
Yeah.
climax.
Yeah. Thanks. This is great. There's so many comments on the side. I'm sorry I haven't been able to keep up with you all here. I will read them, and I really appreciate your and as far as like the 7, 8, like I'm like I get the 6 and 7, and with this fourth character,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to set up the end. So we probably don't even need to talk about the end right now because it's probably going to change
Yes.
based on all of that. And this is great. I'm so glad I popped this up. I really appreciate the feedback.
Excellent. Yeah.
And I appreciate you and all the videos and stuff you've been doing. I've really been learning a lot from your very thoughtful videos.
I
So thank
appreciate
you.
that. Thanks so much.
Mhm.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you. Well worth the time.
Perfect. Glad you came on today.
All right. Cheers. Thanks.
All right. So that final note that I was giving to our friend Migsy there, I want to reiterate a bit in that a lot of times, if you're going to have in your story circle your climactic movement, you want to set up the characters that are going to be involved in that climactic movement earlier on in the story. So when you're looking at this, I would say big picture, the 1 through 4, so you can kind of split it like this. This is our setup side of our circle. And then on the other side, the 5 through 8 becomes our payoff side. And so in the same way that if you were going to craft a joke, how would you do that? Well, you need the setup of the joke, and then you have the punchline, right? You need the A and you need the B. You need to give us something and then twist it and show us how it evolves, right? And so when you have a character, right, you are setting up a character here, and then the 8 and the 1. So the 1, I'm going to do it like this, just kind of show you the relationships between the setup side and the payoff side here. The 1 is connected to the 8. The 8 is the change, right? So how is the character's situation changed ultimately at the end? And so those are kind of our bookends, right? Who is our character? What is their immediate initial situation? And then finally at the end, where have they ended up after this story? And then with the 2, we have what their want is, and the 2 is connected to the 5, right? Where essentially you could say want achieved, goal achieved, this kind of thing, where they do want something, and then it is connected at the 5. Now, the 3 is connected to the 6 because we have our initial problem, and then we have our pivotal problem, where within this, a lot of times you can see in the initial problem, many times you see a problem that is starting to come together, but is not always fully and completely formed. One example of this, if we just took Act 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring, the first Lord of the Rings film, in the initial problem, we have the understanding that the Ring of Power has been found and the ring wraiths are coming, right? So we have this sense that the Ring of Power cannot stay in the Shire because these hooded men, all in black, are coming for the ring. So now this sets up our 4. The 4 is connected to the 7. This is our initial choice, and then this becomes our climactic choice. And so now we have to get out of the Shire, right? That is, the ring cannot stay in the Shire. We need to get out of the Shire. Why? Because the ring wraiths, who are essentially Sauron's henchmen, they are the representation of our ultimate antagonist, Sauron, who's way out in the distance, but we actually want somebody physically in the story to be a problem, so that is the ring wraiths. So we got to get out of the Shire. The pivotal problem is now not that the ring wraiths are coming, but the ring wraiths have found the hobbits. The ring wraiths are here. So what happens is, okay, we want to get out of the Shire in this first, let me see if I can find, I'd love to be able to find I think it's on my hard drive actually. Whatever. I know I've got some movies around here somewhere. Because I think I have, whoops. I think I've got this. Anyways, whatever. We'll just stick to this for now. So in the first act of the Fellowship of the Ring, Frodo gets to Bree. So Bree is this town that's outside on the outskirts of the Shire. And he's supposed to be meeting Gandalf here, right? So Frodo at Bree. We should have, yeah. So the end of the Prancing Pony. So what happens is, in the end of Act 1, come on. So we get to this inn in this little town. And Gandalf is supposed to be here. Because Frodo was supposed to meet up with Gandalf at this inn at the end of let's see, Bree, it should be the, like, if I can find that gatekeeper scene. That'd be, yeah, here we go. This guy. So they get to this guy.
What do you want? I'm heading to the Prancing Pony.
So this is this town called Bree. That's the want achieved, okay? The ring wraiths are coming, so we've got to get out of the Shire. This is all in Act 1. So we get to Bree. Awesome. But we've got a problem. The ring wraiths have found the hobbits. And this little character, this side character here, ends up being a great setup because the... hopefully it's let's see, ring race LTR. So yeah, Nazgul attack at Bruce. So in the 6, okay, we've got Aragorn, and we meet Aragorn, and all that's great. Okay, it should be, yes, right here. So now this same character, this character is used as this little setup and payoff once again. And this is used to give the audience a sense of where the ring wraiths are in space, right? This character anchors us. This is an important note to think about. This character is we only see them in this first act. We never see them again for the entire rest of the story. But when we see this character, we know exactly where we are. We know that we are at the gate of Bree, because this is the gatekeeper of Bree, and so therefore, this all we have to do, right? All the director has to do is point the camera at this character, and it places the audience in space. And so we know when we see this character, the hobbits are just down the road inside this town. So now we know 6. The ring wraiths are here, right? And in the beginning, we are told that they are coming. Let's see. So that scene happens here in the initial problem, where we are shown they have left. They are on the way to the Shire. They are on the way to Frodo. They are not here yet. This is why, if you watch my climax video, that the 4 is the debate and choice, because we have some time here. Usually our enemies are not right at the gate. There's some time and there's some build-up. So attaching this back to Migsy's stories that he just showed, if we set up Nigel and we set up this other 4th character as part of this initial problem, they haven't yet become a huge issue, but we understand where they are and who they are and what they might be doing. Then when they come in at the 6, at the payoff, we don't have to stop and explain what's going on. The 6 and the 7 can move together as one, as a present movement of drama, right? Where there are no breaks, there are no days of time passing, that this is all happening at once, because that's how you create a climax. A climax needs to be in the present. It can't be split up, because splitting up time slows the pacing and slows your climax. So now the ring wraiths have found the hobbits. Now what do we have to do? Well, now ultimately we have to trust Aragorn and leave Bree, which was not the plan. And that's a big point of the pivotal problem, is that many times the character thinks they're going to get to the 5, and that's going to be the end of the story. They think they get to this 5. They think this is going to be the end. Frodo thought, all I needed to do was get to Bree. Gandalf's going to be there. He's going to tell me what to do next. And everything will be okay. But the ring wraiths have found the hobbits. Gandalf is not in Bree like he said he would be. So now we have to make a choice on the fly that we could not prepare for. And that ends up being trust Aragorn, leave Bree. We really don't have much of a choice. We got to go with this guy, or these ring wraiths are going to kill us. And now we have the change. Now Frodo is with Aragorn. So understanding that these pieces mirror one another, right? We have the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have the 5, 6, 7, 8. And this is why a lot of the times I talk about making sure that when you have important characters in the story, that we're setting them up. Because if you try to bring in a super pivotal character right in the 6, and the audience doesn't know who this character is, doesn't know what they believe, doesn't know what they want, it's not going to work because we don't understand who this person is. It's not going to make us fearful if we see this person. It's not going to give us any understanding as to who they are. We want to get this in the setup when we have more time to actually explain things and talk out what's going on. So hopefully that's helpful. You'll notice that Migsy was also discussing length and whether or not his story could actually fit within the time frame that he wanted it to. And I've found that part of the reason I like outlining and why I'm a big proponent of outlining is because it allows you to understand what those fundamental pieces of your story are, so that if you want to reduce 8 pages or add pages, you can do so without losing the core of the story. It also helps if you end up getting notes from someone, if you end up selling your story or having to work with a production company to make the project. If they, being people who do not have as clear of an understanding of the story as you do, because you are the writer and therefore will always have a better understanding of the story than people who are not writers, when you're given notes, you can translate those notes effectively without losing the crux of the story, without actually losing any of the core beats that make the story functional. You're able to make those changes and build something that really works. Welcome in, Mary. All right, let me catch up with the YouTube chat, see if you guys had any questions I can answer today. Your story could be the Nicoletta was saying, could the theory of the 4 corner opposition be combined with McKee's 4 thematic corners? I don't know what McKee's 4 thematic... Oh, yeah, so he's... Yes, it's essentially 4 corner opposition. It's essentially 1-to-1. McKee explains it by talking about like the negation of the negation and like these really big terms that I'm not a huge fan of. But yes, what he is ultimately describing is 4 corner opposition in his language. Ray is in the Discord chat is talking about outlining. Yes, I'm a huge proponent of outlining because when you organically write, that can give you a lot of ideas. It can give you a better sense of who your characters are, but it is rarely able to give you a well interwoven, interconnected story because of the nature of you have written it super linearly, and so things are going to be naturally disconnected and naturally confused, just as is the nature of organic writing. Because your mind is not super structured in terms of your stream of consciousness thought process, right? Like, if you just listen to your own mind, you will notice that it is very rarely perfectly clear and succinct all of the time. And that's the case for pretty much everyone. I don't know of anyone's mind who is perfectly clear at all times. And so you can definitely write a first draft that way if you want to blast out your story, get a sense of what's going on. However, it's very rare for that story to come out at a level where it's just done, right? A lot of the times, writers who write very organically, in other words, write without an outline, they do a lot of rewriting. Drafts and drafts and drafts of rewriting. And so if you're a big fan of the drafting process and you don't have a problem doing tons and tons of rewrites, then maybe that can work for you. But when I've worked with writers one-on-one, I've found that the writers who want to immediately hop back into the draft end up suffering because they hop back into the draft and then they haven't represented what they've written in the new draft and the outline, and then we're just going back to confusion because it is very hard to get that 10,000-foot view of what's going on in your story in the draft, because the draft is pages and pages of just scenes. But when you have structural headings like I do, or when you have a character web that you can specifically place characters around and understand who they are, this gives you this top-down view of the story that is extremely beneficial in making sure you have something that is cohesive, interconnected, and clear, and it gives you a sense of what isn't working in the story much more clearly. So a lot of times when I'm working with a writer one-on-one, what I'm doing first and foremost is I'm reading their draft, and then I'm translating their draft back into an outline. I'm taking the useful pieces that are in their draft, placing them in an outline, and then I might have a collection of some of the good creative ideas they might have in that story, but that are not fully complete. Because a lot of first drafts, it's not that they are totally terrible or they're a terrible idea or something like this. Many times they're simply incomplete. You'll notice today in Miggsy stories, we were looking at adding an entire new character to complete that four-corner opposition and give more weight to our opposing viewpoint. That's not saying that his idea is bad. It's saying that there is an incomplete element. And so a lot of clarifying a story is just completing it, making sure that we actually have a clear structure, making sure that we actually have a character web that is functional for the size and scope of the story that we are making sure that we actually have two viewpoints in conflict that are fully fleshed out, that we have built out clear arguments for and are present in the story. So it's not just shifting around ideas. That's what I hear sometimes is people will say, oh, isn't doing coaching or isn't having a co-writer, something like that, isn't that just adding new creative ideas? No, it is completing the story. There is a certain level of completeness required if you are someone who wants to actually take the audience through a thematic journey. If you want to write something that is more anti-plot or more abstract or more for the vibes, then the level of completeness is up to your interpretation. But if you are someone that wants to take the character through a thematic journey, well, there are certain organic definitions to what is required to take the audience through an organic journey or in a thematic. So what I say a lot of the times is what we are creating here on these live streams and what I'm working on my YouTube channel and my course and coaching and all these things is we are building dramatic narrative. And this is the type of story that we are building. You could also say, another word for this would be thematic narrative, where we are building a narrative, a story with a meaningful thematic underlying idea that is not just for the aesthetics alone, but actually has a foundation that we are embedding all of our characters into, and that we are motivating the choices in that story more than just because it's part of the plot, but there is a thematic underlying element to those choices. And then to have a thematic narrative, well, then that means we need a philosophical conflict. And that's just the big ideas that distill down into important scene choices. That's how they're connected. Sometimes people can get confused by this big term of philosophical conflict. That means worldviews and beliefs in conflict. How do we actually express worldviews and beliefs in conflict on the micro level in a scene? Well, it's choices. Individual choices express your larger philosophical conflict. And then if we want to create character arcs, well, we need to actually create a structure to have at least two choices. No matter the size of the story, you need a minimum of two choices if you are actually going to have a character arc, right? Because a character arc means that we have to allow change. If we're going to have an arc, then that means that we have to allow for some sort of change, and we cannot have change if we only have one instance. We must have two instances. So we have choice 1, choice 2. If they make the same decision twice, that's a flat arc. If they make an initial choice and then they change their mind in the end, that is a change arc. And then there's different versions of those, like a negative change arc or a positive change arc. Those are based on, again, the themes in the story and the writer's viewpoint on whether this is positive for the character. Are they moving towards truth, or are they moving more towards lies? That would be positive or negative. And so then to have two choices, well, now we actually need a dramatic structure that gives us our two choices. And then from there, you're able to build out, okay, well then how do we actually get to two choices? Well, we need a problem, because a problem presents a choice. And that can be also, sometimes it's termed as an opportunity, depending on the character's perspective. And then we need our pivotal problem on the other side so that we can reintroduce a new choice. Of course, we need a character. They need some sort of desire. And then now we have, this creates like the spinal cord of the story, where we have a want and then we have a goal, so that we actually have a spine to place these problems and choices on to actually lead the character to a new situation over here. Therefore, what we are looking at on this channel is dramatic narrative, aka thematic narrative. That is a philosophical conflict distilled into choices. We need at least two of them to create a character arc. Therefore, we use a story circle. And then from there, we're just looking at size and scope and scale. Are we looking at a short? Are we looking at a 5-page short? Okay. Well, then we only need two choices and one circle. Or are we looking at a feature film? Well, now we're looking at like 120 pages. So we're probably going to have way more choices. We might have anywhere from, I think minimum would be eight important choices, all the way to like, you could have, like 30 key choices made by all sorts of different characters. And we're going to have 4 circles in that, because a feature film has 4 acts. And usually an act is around 25 to 30 pages long. Therefore, in a 120 pages, 30 times 4 is 120. We have 4 circles. And so it fractals up and down. And that is essentially how it works. Steven asks, hey Tyler, if I write an 8-minute short story, where would the midpoint take place? Is it 5th to 6th minute? Should it be that way, or should I forget about the pages? Your midpoint is going to be around the direct middle of the story. So it will be around the 4th or 5th minute of that short. Also, within a short, your midpoint is going to be right here. and then you're going to be heading into your climax essentially like very soon after that. And so then minute 6, minute 7 then becomes your climax, and then minute 8 can be your change. So your midpoint in a short, especially one that is that short, it's going to be essentially directly touching your pivotal problem. So your midpoint is going to be where the character gets that goal on some level, and then you're going directly into your climax from there. Glad to hear it, Max. I appreciate that. Miko says, when starting a new story, which techniques do you recommend to have a strong outline, and in which order? Story circle, four-corner opposition, setups, and payoffs. So in the order, first, the different elements of story will interact with each other. So you are going to fill in different pieces as you're building it. What I found when I'm working with a writer is, like we did with Migsy's story today, we looked at his characters, we had some notes on characters, then we went down into the structure, and then we kind of went back up and rediscussed elements of the philosophical conflict based on his beat 6, right? So there is an interconnectivity between the different elements. However, what I usually do is I split it into 2 main parts, which is essentially setting up the chessboard and then we have our chess pieces in motion. Okay, what this means is setting up the chessboard is going to be, okay, what's my philosophical conflict? Who are my characters? What's my concept? Right? The 3 layers of story being beliefs, emotions, external world. Right? We're trying to set our pieces up before we try to go and figure out all this plot. We want to get, okay, who are our characters? And so in your characters, you're going to be looking at your 4-corner opposition. And what's my philosophical conflict? What do I want this story to say about life? Why is this story important to me outside of just I want to make an interesting plot? And then what's my concept? How am I physically externalizing this concept in an external world where I can actually place characters in? And so Jurassic Park is a great example of this, where we're taking the philosophical conflict of man's scientific power versus nature's power against man. And now we're creating this concept world where the dominant values are man's power, man's scientific power over nature. And that is exemplified by the theme park. And then nature's power is the underdog values in the beginning of the story. And that is shown by the dinosaurs in the cages. And so now this concept, Jurassic Park, literally the 2 sides, Jurassic and Park, right? Nature, man, come together to create Jurassic Park, come together to create this theme park. Now we have characters within that. And now we have the story world. Then on the other side, we send the story in motion. This is going to be your structure. So this is where your story circle comes into play. This is where your scenes and scene choices come into play. And this is where your setups and payoffs come into play. So you will be, usually when you're starting off, you're going to get some of these pieces down and then move over into the other side and work on the structure, work on some of the scenes, work on some of the setups and payoffs. However, it's not always so linear working on the story, which is why I like to use my framework and why I like to look at a story from the 10,000 foot view, because you can come in and say, okay, I was laying in bed and I got this inspiration for an idea, and what I saw first was a scene choice. It's like, okay, so I don't have my characters yet. Maybe I don't have much of the concept, or I have an idea of the concept based on what this scene choice is, but I'm starting with this individual scene, and I'm going to throw that down, and I'm going to write that down, and now I'm going to go, okay, what's this choice about? Okay, well, this choice is about these particular two views in conflict. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go over here and kind of write out a little bit of that based on this scene choice that came into my head. Who were the characters in this scene? Okay, well, I'm going to start with those characters, and then maybe I'm going to start building out my four-corner opposition, my character web as well, and understand, okay, how might those characters be connected to this larger world? And then did I get a sense of my concept in that? Okay, so now I'm starting to flesh these pieces out, and now I'll come back, and then the more that I get a sense of my structure and my scenes and my setups and payoffs, this might again inform my concept or my characters or deepen my philosophical conflict, which then is going to inform your chess pieces in motion. And this process can go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until you feel like you have a complete story. And once you have a complete story, then you're finished. And so again, this can be done in your outlining phase. I like to be in the outline all the way to a scene-to-scene outline. That's how I like to do things. If you work with me in one-on-one coaching, we would be taking your current draft, rebuilding it into a new outline all the way to a scene-to-scene outline, and then writing the new draft. But you can also do this in the outline, go to draft, then take that draft, realize you want to make changes, make the changes in here once again, and do that back and forth. So in the same way that you can go back and forth on setting up your chess pieces and then sending them into motion, you can have the same kind of thing with your outline and your draft, where you can have this back and forth between the two until you feel like you have eventually ended up at a complete story. And so when do you know it's complete? Well, that is largely based on you and where you feel like it's actually in its final position. Now, when you feel like it's polished and complete, or when you feel like it's done, let's say, that's really dependent on you. However, its level of completeness is more of an objective thing, because most of the time, first drafts, they don't have a fully clarified concept. They don't have a fully clarified philosophical conflict. They don't have a complete character web. They don't actually have structure all the way down to having clear acts that have their own clear climaxes within those acts that then send us to our final climax. They don't have clear scene choices. They don't have clear setups and payoffs. So the level of completeness in your story is objective. But then you will ultimately be the decider of, is this complete story now a full expression of my vision for that story and a full expression of how I want the story to ultimately play out? That is up to you. All right. I got to run today. We're streaming for a little bit of a shorter stream today, about an hour and a half, but I think we covered a lot of good stuff today. Thank you, Migsy, for bringing your story forward. If you are interested in asking me a question directly on stream or sharing your story with me to have me work on it, click the link in the description and join the Discord below. If you're interested in working with me directly in one-on-one coaching, you can check out my website at practicalstreamwriting.com. And I will see you all. The next stream should be on Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I will see you all there. I hope you enjoyed. See you all next time.